The anime waifu, a concept once relegated only to the most extreme of otakus, but now normalized in an ever-increasing fandom. But what is the nature of the waifu, and why do we have one? And that is what I wish to explore in this video. I would start with the science behind love, but in my research, I found myself deeply dissatisfied with its explanation, as it is often simply the description of physiological effects, as opposed to the inner, more subconscious drive. Therefore, I will simply skip to my theories. First, I must begin with my theory on beauty, because I believe that we can only love something that we also find beautiful. For when love is used in any other case, it is either to simply mean a strong interest, like loving a hobby, or to sugarcoat the feeling of obligation or duty. For example, when someone says that they love the disfigured child or spouse. Furthermore, we should not shy away from acknowledging the power of beauty, which has not only played pivotal roles in history, but has also been the subject of research in modern times, such as the halo effect. Without further delay, here is my theory. The primary evolutionary purpose for the perception of beauty is related to progeny. To explain, let's examine the two stages related to an offspring: creation and rearing. The first stage is the act of creating offspring, which poses more immediate risks to the parents. As this act leaves both parents vulnerable, there must be a degree of trust to ensure it is not a ruse. Additionally, it can facilitate the spread of diseases, which makes indicators of good health particularly advantageous. In the second stage, rearing offspring is a time and resource-intensive activity, so while trust in the other parent's commitment to the child is necessary, their capability to do so is even more important. However, the feeling of beauty applies not only to people, but also to non-people. This, I believe, stems from the three standards that facilitate the perception of beauty, which are utility, safety, and respect. The utility standard is based on how living things aim to maximize gain while minimizing loss. And in mate selection, this is manifested in a preference for healthy partners, as they are presumed to experience illness less frequently and with milder symptoms, while also having higher productivity. Additionally, these positive traits may then be passed on to the offspring. When this is applied in non-human contexts, this standard is repurposed to help us identify objects or methods that reduce our cognitive load, for example, an organized pantry. Next, the safety standard revolves around trust, and is primarily influenced by behavior. For example, how we perceive attractive traits between the sexes. Confidence in men may convey a readiness to protect, while playfulness in women may suggest an absence of manipulative intent. In contrast, behaviors that invoke distrust may be manifested as creepiness. For example, overly familiar behavior, such as flattery from a salesperson, or over-eagerness for approval, like a desperate pickup artist. When this standard is extended to non-human contexts, a field of flowers, for instance, may intuitively signal a toxin-free environment, as the presence of thriving plants suggests the area is safe and hospitable, which leads to a sense of beauty. Last is respect. To begin, let us imagine the result. If mate selection was determined solely by our naked bodies, it would then be unsurprising if most of us failed it. But life tests more than just physical health. It also tests an intangible aspect of us, a quality we have named skill. Throughout history, we have used various objects and symbols to convey this intangible aspect, whether it was through hunted animals, spectacular homes, or elaborate clothing. And while these items are also used to signal our status to our peers, it is a potential mate we ultimately aim to impress. For it not only shows who we are, but also what we are capable of. Now that I've explained my theory of beauty, let's explore my theory of love. To begin, I define love as when one perceives another as an extension of oneself, because it is through this connection that we are able to truly share in another's joys and sorrows. For when any part of us experiences pain, it is the whole self that suffers. And when any part of us experiences pleasure, it is the whole self that delights. Therefore, the part and the whole define one another, much like how an injury cannot be separated from the injured. And upon understanding the origin of the satisfaction of love, then it is natural to presume that the desire for a child should arise. For it is an extension of the self in the truest sense. Where love for another might remain abstract, a child makes that connection tangible, as it embodies both a piece of oneself and the other. So what is the similarity between falling in love with a person and that of an anime girl? And it is the imagination of reciprocation. If we regard love as a perception of self-extension, then it implies control, and with it, the expectation of reliability. Much like how we can expect our left arm to support the right, and the right to support the left, for we are in control of both. But love with a real person harbors a harsh truth. We are ultimately separate beings, and this separateness limits us to the framework of a relationship, and binds us to its unspoken agreement, and that is, they are fundamentally transactional. As we are separate beings, we cannot truly know the reliability of the other, and so, such doubt must be regularly assuaged through beneficial acts, either great or small. Hence, the transactional nature of a relationship. Over time, this dynamic makes us calculative, and may come to regard the effort as not worthwhile or even exploitative, ultimately leaving us only with resentment. But love with an anime girl is different. Because of the impossibility of a relationship, it will forever remain within the early stages of infatuation, within the imagination of reciprocation. And I call this love without temptation, as there is nothing that can lead to jealousy or regret. Overall, while love with an anime girl may deny the richness of a fulfilling relationship, it also escapes the limitations of one. Because in the end, such richness would merely be an illusion, or rather a perception, much like how a lost limb may experience phantom pain. Love is simply pleasure in a part that was never there.